Hello, I'm Mike Fotenopulos. I'm the academic coach for the Springdale Public School District. This video is designed to help students get ready and prepare for the ACT exam. This video specifically will cover the English section. But first, let's talk about what the ACT stands for. Did you know that the ACT test stands for the American College Test? Most students think that it stands for something else, that the A and the C and the T are these long-winded, convoluted acronyms, when in fact that's not the case at all. It's the American College Test. How simple is that? Let's keep that simple premise in our mind as we talk about the ACT test and how simple it can be, especially once we understand it. The test is used by colleges and universities to understand who is ready for their university, their particular campus. For example, the University of Arkansas accepts a 21. The ACT test ranges from 1 to 36. So throughout this presentation, I want to stick with the number 21, since it's indicative to the University of Arkansas. When you're taking the ACT test in the future, you need to be thinking about the college that you want to attend, what is the accepting score that they want, and then you need to start thinking about how I need to go about scoring that score. We're going to talk about that here in just a minute. The ACT test is very consistent. This is another point I want to bring up. For instance, the testing order is always the same. It starts off with English, and then it goes to math, and then it goes to reading, and then it goes to science. It's always going to do that. So there's never a chance for you to make a mistake or wonder what's coming up next when you're taking the test. The English section, too, is full of consistencies. Let's take a look at those consistencies and use them as like predictions. Maybe this is a way, once we start to understand these predictions, maybe this is a way to make us more comfortable with the test, and then it's not going to be this difficult monster that we might fear. Instead, it becomes something that we can work with. The format is always the same. There's 75 questions, there's 5 different sections, and you have 45 minutes with which to complete that section of the test. This equates to about 9 minutes per section, because you're going to average about 15 questions per section. Some sections have 14, some will have 16, but on average, you're going to see somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 questions per section. So again, this might be an opportunity for you to think about in the future, how do I practice for the ACT test? Here's a real simple way. Take a section, take 9 minutes out of your day, score it, test it, score it, and see how you did. We'll talk more about that as we go on. Another predictable measure is what it's going to take to actually score a 21. Let's take a look at the raw scale conversion table. This is going to be the same kind of conversion table that you're going to see at the end of any ACT exam. For instance, here, if I want to score 21 in this English section, I will want to make somewhere between a neighborhood of a 44 to 45 correct questions being answered out of 75 on the English section. It's going to be like that just about every time you take the ACT test. Some tests are going to be a little bit above that. Some will be a little bit below that. But if you can keep that number in mind, 45 to 50 correct answers out of 75, you got a 21. In other words, you're being accepted to the University of Arkansas. So what do you need to do well on the ACT English section to do well? What must you answer? Would be nice to know what kind of questions they're going to ask you. First thing you need to know is that you're probably going to answer about 22 questions regarding the production of writing. You might be saying to yourself, what's the production of writing? It's kind of simple. Do you understand what you're reading? Do you see what the author is trying to express? The author of each one of these sections is trying to make a point. So what is that point? And then finally, is it logical? Is it coherent? Does it follow a sequence? And if it doesn't, how might you be able to fix that? Secondly, there are about 12 questions that deal with the knowledge of language. So what's the knowledge of language? Basically, can you make heads or tails of what you just read? Can you make what you read sound a little better? And also, how good are you at determining the style, the mood, or the tone of a particular subject that you just read? And then finally, there's about 40 questions that deal with the standard English questions. Again, this is the vast majority of the English portion of the ACT test. It deals with grammar, usage, and mechanics in English. Can you recreate a sentence and make it sound even more clear than it was before? Do you understand punctuation? Some of the bigger punctuation moments that you're going to see on the English portion of the ACT test are commas, colons, semicolons, dashes, dealing with apostrophes. If any of these things make you start to think, well, I don't know all the rules of the comma, then this would be a great time to maybe stop this video and go to another video on Google or wherever and start to kind of practice and search out what is the rule for a comma. What are the rules for commas? Another idea that you might see in the standard English questions is usage and common problems within English language. For instance, all the different ways that you might say the word there or read it. All the different ways you might see the word to, referring to a number, referring to also, etc. You need to be able to understand how these words work in our English language. Please reach out to your English teacher for further questions. Also, simply Google the phrase that you've heard me say. Google the phrase ACT, production of writing, ACT, knowledge of language, ACT, conventions of standard English. And you're going to find there's tons of videos already out there that people have put together, especially from the ACT people. As a matter of fact, that's the ones I would go to. Those are the ones that I would go to. You'll be amazed what you'll find. And then get moving on to practicing. One great way to begin gaining ground in the English section of the ACT test is, of course, to read. And I mean read everything. Read everything from complex print, scientific reports, newspaper articles, to even maybe a magazine you might pick up at the counter of a Walmart, like People or Us. Any of that is going to have proper writing in it. And then sometimes you're going to notice that some of that writing is not proper, and that's when you know you're getting good. So read novels, graphic novels, newspaper articles. Just become a devout reader, and you're going to do well on the English section of the ACT test. Go to your counselor and see if they have a preparing for the ACT test like I have here. This is a good model to work off of when you're preparing for the ACT exam. And your counselor usually has these. Also, your school library has these books as well. I'm using the official ACT prep guide. You might want to pick one of these up yourself. The official ACT prep guide has 3 tests in it, and after each test, they'll tell you what you should have scored, what these correct answers were. Also, it'll give you the rationale behind the correct answers. So keep that in mind too. Next, you'll want to get a stopwatch out. You can use it the day of the exam, as long as it's not calculating, as long as it's not beeping. Practice working and reading within those 9 minutes of each section. You can write notes anywhere you choose. Get into the habit of being interactive with your testing material. Do not be passive. Don't sit there and just read and think that's good enough. You can interact with your test booklet, and you can write all through it. First, skim the passage. For instance, if I was going to do this one in front of me, this is the first passage, What Elephants Learn. And what I'm going to do is take 30 seconds and begin to skim this passage. And I just want to kind of see what is the present tense of this, or the past tense, or was it written in future tense? What's the mood of this article? What's this article trying to say? And notice that it goes to 15 questions. Also, after that 30 seconds to 45 seconds, I'm going to then go to the questions and begin answering those. Notice that I want to work on the ones that deal with all the white space versus what I call the ink vomit. These are like number 4 here. Look at number 4. Number 4 looks like it might be the instructions on how to fill out a credit card. Look at number 15. It does the same thing. ACT will do this throughout their test. Again, predictability. Also, I will come back to these last. I want to do these not so challenging ones first, and then come back to these bigger, grander ideas in the English section on these tests last. Remember that about 20% of the time, the test questions, the answer will be B. So you want to keep that in mind. And here, number 1 is B. Number 2, there is no B option, it's G. So again, the G would be my next option. And if I start to have to guess because I'm running out of time, I will want to know what is a good guess. And a good guess would be B. It's about 20% of the time, maybe a little bit less. Also, you're going to see the idea of no change come about throughout the English section. That is to say, the underlying portion that they have has no change. Mr. Fotenopulos, is there another form of consistency that we can take advantage of here? And of course the answer is yes. Routinely, the ACT people will share with you that about 1 to 3 different times throughout a section, you're going to need to pick no change. That's about it. So if you have a whole test full of no change that you've picked, something's wrong. Or if you haven't picked it at all, again, something's wrong. You're probably going to see about 1 to 2 to 3 different times throughout each section where you will need to have picked no change. So keep that in mind. Remember the simple ideas behind the test. Oftentimes, the best answer is the simplest answer. And if I look at some of these that get wordy, number 15, for instance, back to number 4. If I scan the page over to the next passage, I notice again, we start to get wordy questions. Again, what might be the simplest answer? The simplest answer. What might be the correct answer is the simplest answer. The shortest answer. The very thing that the ACT people would like for you to be able to do while you're reading the English section is to pick the simplest way to say something. Come to find out, that's the way they want their answers too. So keep that in mind. Finally, when taking the English section, I want you to be thinking about 5 C's. That is to say, think of complete sentences. That's what you're always operating in. The second C, be clear. Let your writing and the way you format this always be clear. And the clearer, the better. The simpler, the better. Be concise, to the point, no redundancy. If you have a moment where you're going to pick an answer that seems to be saying the same thing that you've already have underlined, please don't pick that. They're trying to see if you can pick out redundancy and repetitiveness and over. Also, use consistent verb tense. If it was plural at the beginning of the sentence, it'll be plural at the end of the sentence. If it was singular at the beginning of the sentence, it'll be singular at the end of the sentence as well. And finally, use your context. Be able to understand what's going on in the overall scope of the document, of the passage. Be able to understand predictability, perhaps. What did the author mean? What is the author trying to say? So, think of the ACT test in simple terms. Take advantage of the way the ACT test has predictability to it. Be sure of the score that you want to make. Be sure of the score that you want to make and relate that back to the raw data grid that we saw earlier. What is the score that you want to make? Now, I set this video towards kids that are wanting to make a 21, but many of you might be below that. Many of you might be above that. You find out the score that you need. Get to practicing. You're not going to get better until you get working on this. And again, it's not something arduous day after day. Take 9 minutes here, take 9 minutes there, and work on it. Score yourself and see where you seem to be falling short. Take the ACT test multiple times. Also, here are some great free websites that will help you too. The actacademy.org, actopened.org, and of course, Khan Academy. All of these are great websites that you can go to that will give you all the help you need to continue on with getting better on the ACT test. Reach out to me if you ever need to. Any concerns that you have regarding your career and college readiness and your future. Thank you, and good luck.